Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Mike Killen. He is the best-selling author of 5-Figure Funnels, and Mike is obsessed with motivating funnel builders just like you to sell marketing funnels for 5 figures, increasing your prices and defining a niche. And Mike is the founder of Sell Your Service, and he's focused on helping 1,000 funnel builders sell a marketing funnel for 5 figures. Mike, glad to be talking to you.
And you, Robert, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to have you on. I'm already impressed just barely knowing you because I found out about you from a podcasting site. And you know how sometimes people say, oh, I want to connect. I want to be on your podcast. And you were like aggressive, which is what I like. Plus, I realized I was already somehow in one of your already existing Facebook groups, the Sell Your Service Mastermind. So there's all kinds of connections already. So we're off to a great start.
That's really good. Well, and doesn't that show the power of kind of sticking with it and commitment, and you don't realize how quickly these things can start to layer up and add authority. So that's that's good. I like that. I'll use that as a case study. That's nice.
Yeah, and good. It's a good start in general. And you're so right that there's like that lag time involved, or there's maybe like you try out 10 things and then 2 work out, and it's like it's easy to get discouraged and say, but only 20% of what I'm doing is paying off. But it's like, well, if that 20% can pay off big, then it's more than worthwhile. So having said all that kind of stuff and talking a little bit about selling a service and 5-figure funnels, what is your shtick? What are you all about? And what should we know about you?
Sure. So I was fired from a corporate marketing job because I didn't get marketing at the time for this particular company. And I lost everything. This was back in 2012, and I literally lost everything. I lost a house, car. When you pay someone that kind of money at the age of 24 or whatever I was, 25, you don't tend to save any of it. So I had to move home. I had to move in with my mum. I had to call her up and say, I need somewhere to stay. It was so bad that the company card that I had, I was in the middle of London, but my company credit card was locked. The way they fired everyone, it was a bit like a Black Friday, and they just told people not to come into the office anymore. So I was stuck, and I had to call her up, and all of a sudden I was like, everything that I have learned about getting a job and security and working your way through the business and all this kind of stuff, it seems to disappear. And I decided there and then that I really didn't want to work for somebody else. So I started up an agency, and I did what most people did, which was I'm going to do websites and social media and graphic design and marketing consulting. And I was very broad and all over the place. And I came across a colleague called Troy Dean from a company called WP Elevation. And he set me on a path whereby we chose a very specific niche. And we did really, 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 really well. And in 2016, I exited that business, and I was kind of unsure as to what to do. And funny enough, Troy then said, look, why don't you come out to Miami and have a conversation with some of our agencies there? And I was like, all right. And the number one question they asked is, how could I sell marketing automation and marketing funnels and all this kind of stuff? How could I possibly sell that for over $10,000 or $25,000? And I was like, that's easy. I'll show you that part. That's the easy part. And so we wrote it on a whiteboard, and that became a webinar, and then a Facebook group, and then a course, and bit by bit it's grown, and we now have books and programs and coaching programs, and we've got software all based around the idea that I want to help funnel builders and marketing agencies increase their average price and get back more of their free time, stop working crazy hours for the number of agency clients that you do. And that's all we do, man. It's just I teach people how to sell marketing funnels day in, day out. And I love it. It's super niche, but it's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
And I mean, it feels like these days you have to be super niche, right? I mean, you open up Netflix and there's so many specific shows and so many specific things. And maybe these last few, and you know how with Facebook, you click on one ad and then they show you like tons of very similar ads, not even from the same person, but just the same industry. In the last week or so, I've been hit with so many different ads from things like if you're an HVAC company, we'll coach you and we'll tell you everything you need to know to like revolutionize your business and get all your employees using this app and get all these leads. And I've seen these ads that are like, we'll book you like 51 qualified leads per week. And there's just so much, there's so many huge numbers and people showing their calendars of like 25 sales calls a day. I'm already overwhelmed. So with all these crazy things that you've done and, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 price point and Facebook groups and books. Like, how do we even get our heads wrapped around it? Because it seems just like basically launching a rocket to Mars, as far as like all the crazy numbers and complexities involved. I'm already just so overwhelmed.
So let's break that down then. So from your perspective and from the guys watching and listening, then is it a question of how does one person essentially start from point zero and scale it to that point, or how do you manage all of that, or should everyone be doing that? How do you want me to go about that?
I think to jump off into it is, how do you go from zero to one to many? Because it seems like from zero, the mindset is just have a couple, and with one, there's already in your head like, I know that this maxes out at maybe like 20 or 30 clients, and then you start thinking about the complexities of employees. So yeah, that initial journey, how do you go from zero to one to many?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because and it's interesting because it comes down to the question of being niche as well. So back in the day, your parents, possibly just on the edge, grandparents definitely, they could own a hardware store, and they could put their hardware store in the center of town, and it would have a radius of 20, maybe 30 miles that people would go to that hardware store for. The internet completely destroyed that. And we all say, oh, the internet's such a revolution. It literally destroyed the concept of generalities. It's no longer enough to have the hardware store, because if I'm super into hammers, and we've done this experiment, we've literally gone and found websites that just specialize in hammers and manufacturers in hammers. I, as someone who wants a hammer, want to get the best possible hammer that I can get for my particular needs, because I, as the customer, feel I am unique. Now, you and I know that most businesses aren't unique. They have three basic things they need to do, which is attract leads, run the business, and make sales and deliver the work. Like, it's not a huge amount of differentiation, but I believe that my business is unique. And so if you want to scale massively, you have to understand or you have to commit, I should say, to an individual core problem and concept that you're going to push forward. So when you mentioned like the HVAC businesses, and we're going to help you get 51 leads a week, that's a really specific message. And that's actually what you scale. So typically we say you don't scale businesses, you scale the idea. And let's say that we came up right now with this is actually a really common problem. YouTubers with a really big following who had their advertising revenue like destroyed by the algorithm. Right? And we say, I'm going to help you transition your revenue from being in the hands of YouTube to being in your own hands. That's the $1 million message. That's the ultimate, that's the niche that we're going to go after. Now, if I've got that particular problem in mind, the first thing I want to put down is, I call it an escape plan or a signature system, that individual process. And that could be 3 steps, 7 steps, 9 steps is probably the maximum. And when you have that process combined with a really hyper-specific niche, all of a sudden it's much easier to write a book, write a ton of blog content, run webinars, run coaching calls, do individual client training, do one-on-one training, do service-based training, because you're selling essentially the same product. And that's what I did, which is why when I first started, people were like, one, what in the hell is a marketing funnel? Two, why would people want to learn how to sell it? I was like, that's almost irrelevant, because I want to be the number one result that people are going to come after. And it meant that at first I could do really broad group training, because it was the same process, exactly the same process as in my book. So that's the key, in my opinion, to scale, is to make sure you've got the process and you do, just as you stated, that individual niche, because all you're doing is saying, well, how wide can I make the audience for this problem? That's fine. Well, in that case, I'll need to do group coaching or content or a course or a book. If I want to do really narrow individual one-on-one, they're going to go through the same process, but it's going to be more accountability, more one-on-one time. And so really that's all I did, was focus on the problem, and then began to build an audience and just made sure that all of our stuff was super, super scalable. And if people want to work with us one-on-one, it costs more because it takes my time out of the business. So that's the trade-off you got to work for. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? Did I understand what you were getting at?
It does, and you did, and my head's already swirling with like 6 like marketing fundamentals that maybe we've heard before but have forgotten, or maybe you haven't combined, because you always hear about having like the customer avatar, which I'm sure. I don't know. I hate that. It's so
Yeah,
cheesy, but I
yeah,
get the idea behind it. You hear about things like, solve the problem and add pain, and that kind of relates to like having your like escape plan and having it really narrowed down to a specific person. And even when your hand motions, you're kind of making like a funnel almost of
yeah,
like, well, if you want to go really broad, you go with the group training, but then if you get it down to the one-on-one, then it's more of like the high ticket and things like that. And all that kind of brings you back to thinking about that whole oldish now concept of moving the free line, right?
mm,
Of
mm,
of
mm.
if the end of your funnel is just information and just a book, well, then you have to be careful about what you hold back. But if the end game for a select group of people is a done for you service or something like that, then give all the information away that you want, right? Teach everything on the webinar, say
Yep.
everything in the book, because what you really want them to do is say, okay, I get that there's a problem. I know that I need to change it. Here's what I could do, but it's way less painful for me to hire Mike or his team or someone like him to implement this escape plan for me. And so this kind of topic here, Mike, like it's been on my mind a lot more the last maybe year and a half or so, because like I've been like slowly but not fast enough kind of building like more of a done for you service and giving away,
Mhm.
selling less software and less of courses, just because I don't know, it's a new challenge. And it seems like once you get someone over the hump of like, okay, it's time to change, it seems like there's a lot less obstacles, right? Because if you're just selling information, it seems like they don't believe they can do it, or they're not going
Mhm.
to follow through. And it's so, am I right here that it seems like just there's like a bigger roadblock in like a service as far as like believing that they have to adopt some new ideas, but it seems like after that, it's kind of more smooth sailing than trying to drag someone along implementing information. Is that on the right track?
Yeah, so again, there's a couple of pieces there to unpack. I think the first one, and this is true of all businesses, I have yet to come across a business who cannot implement this. I've got colleagues who do these same models with like crime scene cleanup. So typically that's a private company here in the UK who does that after there's been a really grisly death. I've got a colleague who literally her businesses do that. So the done for you model is her team go in and they scrub it, and they have varying scales. So this works for any and all businesses. And there's a few key points, some of which you've kind of highlighted there. First of all, it's important to know that there's that trade-off between, if they don't invest a huge amount, by definition, they're going to have to do more work. And on the other side, in fact, I use this as a sales pitch. I say, look, would you like the results faster, easier, and with more automation? They go, yeah. I go, great. Get us to do more of the work. And every time you want us to do more of the work and for you to do less of the work, it's going to cost a little bit more. I I actually don't think that high ticket, five figure, six figure services is the only way to revenue and profitability. I don't believe that at all. I believe you can make money in the midline. Absolutely, you can. We know that for a fact you can. The difference is when people deliver a $25,000 product or service, but they only charge a couple of grand. That's the problem. Is if your customers have only got a couple of grand, and let's say they are in that sweet spot of courses and online learning, and they want to do that, great. Give them that then. If someone comes to me and says, I'd love to work with you, Mike, I go, fantastic. Our 6 month coaching program's 25 grand. They go, oof, I don't quite have that much. I go, that's not a problem. We have a $2,000 option, and so on and so forth going down. The the other point is that courses and sales and products, they need to be qualifiers. I think people view those products in the wrong way. I think people view them as the be all and end all, and that it's sort of like this magic key to scaling, where in actual fact I think that those products should be used as qualifiers. First of all, anyone who goes through your program and buys from you, that to me is a perfect hire. That is the perfect person that you should be hiring onto your team, because they've gone through the process, they understand it, they're evangelists, and it's not going to be everyone. Maybe 1 in 50, maybe, I don't know, who really connects with it, completes it, goes through it. That's the person I want selling my next product. So it's a fantastic hiring tool. Like, it's an outstanding hiring tool. And the second piece is that anyone who goes through that process, if they go, yeah, I went through it, but I still really struggled, that's not them saying you failed. That's them saying, I want more help. So they're literally saying, I need more help. You go, great. would you like to work with us further, and we can work on accountability and implementation. You can work with the done for use guys, and it's 25 grand, but we'll take off the course cut price from the initial thing if you want it and drop it down to 23 or whatever, and it's only a 2 grand deposit per month. And what's that? That's 12 months at two grand. That roughly works out. So you then have this qualification program. I think people have this thing where they'll sell courses, people complete them, and then they just drop off. I'm like, no, 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 no. What you should be doing, don't try to find more leads for those guys. Find more. Seth Godin said this, right? He was like, don't find customers for your products, find products for your customers. The people who have gone through your program, if they failed and if they haven't fully implemented or connected with it, that's not a failure on your behalf. That's them saying, I need some more help. So that to me is again ripe for memberships and programs and communities and high ticket courses and stuff. So personally, there is a hump, but I want it there because it's a qualifier. I want people to be qualified before continuing to work with me. So that's how I see that.
And I like the way that you see it. And there's like a handful again, every time that we have the next exchange of information, I feel like I get like 3 to 5 like nuggets. I'm like, okay, I need to unpack them from my brain because like we pass through them and they're really good. And so what you're saying here is that if someone like buys a product course from us and they get halfway and they don't follow through with it, it's not a failure. It's not all or nothing. It just means that they need help. And you're making me think back to, because I mean, I've been at this for like 20 years and doing like software and, ebooks and things like that. And you're making me think of like early on, I was just trying to get jobs as a programmer. And it was always a struggle. And it was like always playing the price wars and people wanted discounts. But as soon as I created information products, sure, I'd have some people saying, oh, I'll do it myself. But I had that handful of the top tier, the top percent, and they'd buy a ebook or a report from me because that was before videos and courses, but they'd buy the product and get to the end and say, I'll just hire you to do it. And I wonder if they bought the product intending to hire, or if they bought the product and then they got discouraged and ended up hiring. But either way, it was like just that alone ended up increasing my prices. And you're also making me think about having over the years having a couple of star students, right? Because as you know, you put out information, you put out a course, it can be the best thing ever. But really, I mean, to do 10%, do 20% really take action. If someone does anything in your course, they're already like just a star student, just because most people just buy and do nothing. And so there was like a couple of, like, one person was such a good student in one of my courses that he became my business partner for a bunch of years.
Right.
And then someone else was super active and excited and knowledgeable in one of our courses. And our mistake there was we approached her and we said, well, we taught all this and we would like to put a payment button on our download page saying, if you are a buyer of ours and you just want to implement it, then use this lady to get it done for you. And we were like, can you set up a button, give us a commission? And she didn't follow through. And you're making me think we should have just hired her. We should have just paid her like per job, per month, per hour, whatever, because the sending her on her own to do it wouldn't have worked out. So I guess these are things where they say what failure is the opportunity to beginning in more intelligently. But you've kind of flipped around a lot of the I don't know if it's like common sense, maybe not, but it's like the default kind of negative giving up attitude towards like a better way of going about it. And so I don't want to keep you on the line for too long, but as we're approaching maybe the past 5 or the final 5 or 10 minutes of our conversation here, what do you think people out there need to know about funnels or about selling a service? Because like I could talk all day long about going off on tangents, but what do people out there in internet land, podcast land really urgently need to know?
So my sweet spot is selling marketing services, which is basically to say you're going to work one-on-one with the client, or at least ideally your team works one-on-one with the client. Whether you are an accountant or you build marketing services, your marketing agency, or you are a personal trainer, the application is all the way through. I'm going to keep the language in the way that I talk to funnel builders. So if you are marketing agencies and consultants, the key to being able to charge 5 figures, it's got nothing to do with experience. Everyone thinks, oh, it's to do with my portfolio, or I haven't been doing this a particularly long time. People forget Tesla's most expensive car when they released it was their first one. You have to release your first product as the most expensive model. It's only after you have started delivering those services and cars and prices or products or whatever you want to do it, then you can drop your prices. There's nothing wrong with charging $3,000 or $4,000 as long as it has nothing to do with your time. So the first rule of thumb I say is make sure that if someone wants to work one-on-one with you, that you charge at least 5 figures. It doesn't have to be 25 grand, but it has to be 5 figures minimum, because that's your time out of the business. And there are 6 components to be able to raise that price. And every time you put in one of those components or one of these components, you'll find that you're able to justify a higher price. And the first one was the one that you first identified at the start of the call, is your audience or your niche. If you go after someone specific, you can charge specific prices. If you go after generalists, you can charge general prices. If you have a red 1960s convertible Ferrari that you want to restore to showroom condition, you're not going to take it to anyone. But if someone says, my garage specifically restores red 1960s Porsches to showroom condition, you're going to want to go there because it's specific to what you can do. It's so important to be able to do that. So the first thing to be able to raise your prices is your audience. The second thing to raise your prices, somewhat counterintuitively, is amount. You need to set the price. Weirdly, you need to set the price first and work backwards. I could talk for days on pricing, but what most people tend to do is they say, here's all the things I want to deliver to the client. How much do I think I can get away with charging them? And that's the wrong way. What you need to do is say, I want to earn 100 grand a year. I would rather work with 4 clients, so 1 every quarter. Therefore, I need to charge 25 grand per high ticket client, and work backwards from that and say, what would I give someone for 25 grand? The third piece is your assets. This is about making sure that you've got lead generation materials out there. You talked about things like ebooks and courses and products and content and blog posts and booking forms. All of this stuff adds up. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen immediately. But businesses with assets, like even a sales page is an asset. Those people say, oh, I sell websites or SEO. I'm like, great, where's your sales page for it? As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist until it has a sales page. So all of those things build up, and you'll find, again, businesses who are able to charge seemingly crazy money, they have a ton of assets behind what it is that they're doing. The fourth piece is authority. You need to be specific in who you are and what you do, and you need to create content. You need to have some kind of opt-in offer, lead magnet, killer training program, something you give away for free. I recommend at minimum a webinar or a 10,000 word blog post. If you do a webinar specific to your audience, talking about their specific problem, get it transcribed. There's your 10,000 words. Roughly an hour's speaking is 10,000 words. That replaces your need for a portfolio. All of a sudden, you don't need any of that stuff because you've got this thing. People say, oh, how could you possibly help me book more calls? You go, great, I've got this training webinar and a written blog post. Do you want to book a call with me? And booking a call with me is an asset. It's a Calendly form or whatever. All of these things matter as long as you're moving out of the manual process. And the final 2 pieces are generate attention, tell people who you work with. The amount of funnel builders and marketers who say, Mike, can you help me get more leads? And I go, tell me who you work with. And let's say even then they have a niche and they'll say, oh, I work with dentists. I go, great. Does your mum know that you work with dentists? Does your grandmother know that you work with dentists? If you're not telling people in your immediate network, hey, I'm looking to work with dentists, why would anyone come to approach you anyway? You have to be consistently telling people, I work with this audience. And action, which is the final one, is all about closing. And we've talked a bit about that, refusing to let people drop off and making sure that you're even making them an offer in the first place. And to do a horrible transition into a pitch, I have a book, which you mentioned, 5-figure funnels, available on Amazon and whatever. And this goes into great detail on that. And even if you're not a funnel builder, I think it's quite an appropriate book. But that's how you raise your prices, man, is those six segments. And over time, when you build them, that's what raises up your prices on and on and on. And it's surprisingly easy to do. It just requires a little bit of focus.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went off on a rant there. I apologize.
But I mean, that's perfect. I mean, yeah, there's like the focus needed, but also it seems like there's a lot of just like reconfiguring that. I think there's so many of us out there are just like using our time and using our business incorrectly, thinking too small. And there's like, it seems like a recurring theme in our conversation here is like flipping so many things on their head and like working backwards. Like you said, instead of piling in things and then undercutting yourself and saying, well, I think this might only be worth $1,200, being like, no, $100,000 per year, one client per quarter, $25,000, and then figure out what gets put in there. I mean, you're making me even think back to like one of the best things I ever did was writing a sales letter for a product first, right? Because
100%. Yeah.
And like that's another example of just like it's counterintuitive, and like doing the cart before the horse pays off so much, because it's easy to like say like, oh, well, I heard I need to make a free gift. All right, I'm already sort of tired. Now I need to make a paid product. I'm already sort of tired. Now I'm making the sales letter, and by then I've given up. But there's so many things of just doing things in a weird order, or like the order of importance, which again, common sense doesn't tell you that's what it is, but it is. I mean, this gives us so much to think about, and we all need to be doing all these things. But as you said, it's overwhelming to think about all of it at once. So that's why we need to have multiple ways of getting the information to us from your book and from your webinars, and definitely from joining your Facebook group, correct?
Yeah, 100%. If you go to sellyourservice.co.uk/Facebook, that'll redirect you. And we're constantly talking about that stuff, and we've got a YouTube channel as well, which is youtube.com/sellyourservice. And really, I'm a firm believer, like at its core, that you have got the wisdom inside you already. You know this stuff already. A big part of what we do is actually giving people the confidence to put that into place, and the self-permission to put that into place. You should be charging higher. You know that you should be selling before you build it and sell it before you deliver it. It's really about giving people the confidence to go away and do that. It's not consuming information is important, and learning and educating is really important. I have just today invested in another $2,000 a month training program for myself, because I believe it's important to keep learning. But a lot of the time we have the knowledge inside us, and it's just about standing up and saying, this is how I'm going to run my business. Like with pricing, people say, well, what if I'm too expensive? What do people say I'm too expensive? Agree with them. Go, yeah, I am expensive. I'm a lot of money. Sign here. Like, them saying no doesn't pay the bills. Them saying you're cheap doesn't pay the bills. So I would rather be seen as crazy expensive by 99% of the people that I work with, for the one person I do work with to be profitable, because that's the only way I can run a business. Your price has got nothing to do with anyone else. It's your business. Run it how you want to run it, rather than what you think people are running it as, rather than how you see people running it as. Their journeys are very different to yours, and you've probably, as I've mentioned, got the wisdom inside you already. It's just giving yourself permission to follow that path and follow that direction, as opposed to, like, I think you mentioned, what was it? It seems like that's the normal thing to do. Well, apparently not, because most businesses actually don't do it that way. So it's an interesting journey that we have to go on with these kind of businesses.
Well, it's exciting, and I'm excited for you, and you make it fun, right? Like you said, you encourage us. There's so much information out there. You can dial up YouTube and find out anything you want, but then to actually convince yourself into taking these risks and to changing the way that you do business and thinking about things, maybe that takes a little bit longer. But that's why we need guys like you to be working on us. I mean, some of my favorite like marketers out there are guys like Dave Ramsey, or like Grant Cardone or Brad Lee. And it's always the same. Like, you watch a video and like you've seen them all, but then you watch it again and again, and they sort of like convince you a little bit more, even though it's only like a handful of bullet points, no matter who these experts are. And there's also the element of like making it fun. Like, even you mentioned about the crime scene cleanup people. You remind me of Jeff Walker. Like, I hate Jeff Walker. Like, I think he's just, I couldn't hate him anymore. But Jeff Walker, he talks about like product launches, and he had some client that did like horse dressage or something. And so it's like the fun, just outside the box case studies that you wouldn't have thought of. Like, I think like Frank Kern one time said like he wrote a Craigslist ad and sold a house from it. So it's like even just like the little nuggets of like the entertainment and the kind of like convincing you to take this action. It just reminds me that information is good, but then you also need to kind of add some personality depth to it and things like that. So I mean, so much to think about, and we need to be going to sellyourservice.co.uk, get that book, get on that Facebook group. That way you can join people who are just like you, exactly where you are and where you and have the same goals as you, and they want to have a successful business just like you, where you're specialized, where you're niche, where you have a funnel, where you increase your prices, all the things that you set out to do initially in your business. But then for some reason, it was easy to compromise and compromise. And next thing you know, you have a business that you don't like. So it is time to make a change and go to sellyourservice.co.uk. And do you have any final parting words of advice from Mike? Any final last minute URLs or any just like final sentences or things that tell us as we wrap up our journey here?
No, I sign off all of my things with have courage, commit, and take action, and that's what we're all about. Is have the courage to be disliked, take action today because it's probably going to need to change anyway, and commit to the result. And those things haven't really steered me wrong. So that's all I would say to finish it off with.